Recording in progress.
Welcome students to Legacy IAS. In this particular video, we are going to cover the most important topics from environment perspective in the last week. What are the important issues that have happened and they are important from the perspective of our exam. Some very important topics have happened. Let us start with the first one. The first one is about a smog eating photocatalytic coating. Okay, understand this, that this is a project that is given out by the Delhi government and IIT Madras. Delhi government particularly because Delhi being an urban city is also a victim of pollution levels, higher pollution levels. That is, you can find that air quality index is something that has been of a deteriorating quality. That means it has been harder for the Delhiites to actually breathe, right? So Delhi government and then IIT Madras, they have been researching on how to reduce these kind of smog levels, right? So it is a 6-month pilot project and it talks about smog eating photocatalytic coating. We'll try to understand on roads, pavements, tiles, and this is through the reduction in the nitrogen dioxide and the volatile organic compounds. Now understand this, when we talk about smog, okay, our understanding of smog from our static portion must be very clear. What is a smog? When we try to understand this, this is of two types. One can be sulfurous smog and the other is your photochemical smog. Okay, so when the most common one that is known, especially in the urban cities, that is your photochemical smog. Photochemical smog, that word photochemical is made from two words, that is photo, that means in presence of sunlight or at the peak temperatures of sunlight, and chemical, that means there has to be a presence of combination of certain types of chemicals so that this smog can occur. So naturally they are classified as a secondary pollutant. Secondary pollutant means that certain types of conditions need to be present for them to act as a pollutant, right? As compared to primary pollutant is something that is present naturally on its own, and also a certain level of threshold may be crossed and then they will start becoming a pollutant. Okay, that means there is no type of condition that is required, they can be present in the atmosphere, right? So when we are talking about smog eating photocatalytic coatings, we are talking about such kind of secondary pollutants that lead to formation of ozone. In which layer? Ozone not in the stratospheric layer but in the tropospheric layer. That means you have near ground ozone formation, and this is something that is very a big contributor to your pollution, air pollution levels, right? It can create resistance, it can create infections within the lung linings, right? So this smog eating photocatalytic coating is something that is gone through the reduction of nitrogen dioxide and VOCs. These are essentially important for the formation of ozone at the tropospheric level, right? You'll not get into the reactions of it, but that is covered in your static part. Going forward, what are photocatalytic smog eating coatings? Okay. Okay. So first thing is coatings. What are these coatings actually made up of? This is something that we have already observed in various kinds of natural substances, okay? And this is the coating made out of titanium dioxide. Chemically, the formula is TiO2 nanoparticles. So this forms an innovation in the nanotechnology area of science and tech as well. So titanium dioxide nanoparticles, what happens is it undergoes under the UV rays, that is the ultraviolet rays of the sunlight that reaches this level, you will find that photocatalysis takes place. What is photocatalysis? It basically states that in presence of sunlight, you will have an accelerated reaction. accelerated rate of reaction. Okay. Okay. So this means on roads, pavements, if you have titanium dioxide coatings, then upon photocatalysis, that means in presence of ultraviolet rays, it will undergo photocatalysis. That means it will accelerate the reaction. The reaction of what? The reaction of nitrogen dioxide forming nitrates. Okay? Nitrogen dioxide forming into nitrates. Okay. Once this is done, nitrogen dioxide is no longer be present for the formation of smog. Similarly, this titanium dioxide nanoparticle will also reduce volatile organic compounds into carbon dioxide and water. This means that even volatile organic compounds are no longer available for the reaction to convert them into ozone near the ground surface. Right? So this serves as a model of smog eating coating, that is the photocatalytic effect will lead to the reactions converting them into harmless substances, right? So preventing in effect the smog in the urban cities. Now moving forward, urban air pollution context. Okay, now we just try to understand it with respect to the pollution levels in the urban cities, right? We know that the cities are suffering from huge amount of air pollution. The air quality index is also deteriorating at an accelerated phase. So let us just try to revise the static portion and understand what are the major air pollutants. What are the major air pollutants? Okay, so right now you see PM 2.5 and PM 10. What are these? These are particulate matter. Particulate matter. What does this mean? Particulate matter. Particulate matter, basically we have to understand that there are two types of air pollutants that can be seen. One is in gaseous phase, okay, gaseous pollutants. The other can be your particulate matter. This means that these particulate matters are so small, they remain suspended in the air for a very long time, and they can actually also travel very, very long distances. And that is why one of the reasons, that is the reason that they prove to be very, very dangerous. The second reason is because of this finer nature of particles, you will find that when they are inhaled, they stay in the bloodstream, and therefore it can create various kinds of diseases, whether it is at the cardiovascular level or it is at the level of cancer, right? So stroke, brain stroke can also happen. So particulate matter, this is PM 2.5, PM 10, okay? Particulate matter 2.5, particulate matter 10. Then nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, volatile organic compounds, and ozone. Ozone, we are not talking about ozone at the stratospheric level, we are again talking about ozone at the level of ground. That means at the tropospheric level, right? Ozone proves to be a pollutant. Also, we should note that ozone is a greenhouse gas, right? What are the sources? When we talk about urban cities, and still we are talking about that the development is moving towards more of urbanization. That means we are going for urbanized cities, 40% cities urbanized till 2030. Maybe that is the target for the development, right? So in these kind of cities, how do we move towards with sustainable development principle in mind? So we have to understand what are the sources at first. So one is vehicular emissions, because you will have more number of people and more number of workplaces, therefore there will be more amount of commute as well. So you will have vehicular emissions, 30 to 40% such vehicular emissions. It is the contributor. Then you have construction dust, right? Because there will be construction of residential buildings, industries that is to power the raw materials and process such kind of substances, process such kind of products that are required by the population living in these cities. Also, industries will require a huge amount of power consumption, electricity consumption. Because of that also you will have huge amount of these kind of pollutants being released into the air. Biomass burning, right? Biomass burning, like burning of trees, burning of dry leaves, all of this will also release a good amount of pollutants into the air. As per Lancet, it has been said that there has been 16 to 17 lakh deaths annually, and this is purely due to air pollution. Okay, 16 to 17 lakh deaths annually per year. That means air pollution is a major killer, right? Next, what is the scientific and technological significance of this kind of finding, wherein Delhi government and IIT Madras have come together to have this photocatalytic effect of smog eating nanoparticles into place? Okay. So one is, it represents nature-based and tech-enabled solution. ठीक है, nature based solution, because something natural has also pointed us, because this is a nanoparticle. Okay, so this will say that you can have very huge amount of surface area. Okay, nanoparticles basically give the phenomenon an understanding that you can have more amount of surface area for absorption, right? And more catalytic process can be taken place because of the increased surface area, right? Then you have tech enabled solution, right? We are talking about again titanium dioxide nanoparticles. So it combines two things. So it is significant when we consider the scientific progress in having solution for air pollution, is that it combines nanotechnology. The second thing is it also has TiO2. This is titanium dioxide. This effectively reduces volatile organic compounds into carbon dioxide and water, and also reduces nitrogen dioxide into nitrites. Okay? So you are combining nanotechnology, that is in the form of nanoparticles, and environmental chemistry, that means reduction of the ones that are going to contribute to formation of ozone at the tropospheric level. These two are extremely important, right, for formation of smog. Now this has been also tested. Okay, it is not like we are the first ones who are going to test it, or we are the first ones who are going to propagate it. It has already been tested globally. And in which countries? It has been tested in Italy, Netherlands, Mexico, and it has been shown to be very, very effective against the NOx levels. What is NOx? It is nitrogen oxides level. Nitrogen oxides levels have reduced, and the reduction locally has been there 5 to 30%. 5 to 30%. Remember, even if you are having volatile organic compounds, you still need nitrogen oxides to be present. Nitrogen oxides must be present for the formation of smog. And if you are able to remove even this one component, then also smog formation can be stopped. Right? Now the advantage is, does it require any type of energy source? That means, do you need to supply continuous amount of energy to it? The answer is no, because sunlight itself helps it to convert such kind of reactions. So it works passively, that means no energy input beyond sunlight is required. And moreover, because of the high-rise buildings, you can also integrate it. You can integrate it into the urban infrastructure. Okay, very easy to do so in the urban infrastructure. Right? So this was the news that was related to environmental pollution and degradation. That is the theme. All right. Next. Now this section is biodiversity and its conservation. Biodiversity and its conservation. Right. So it says, hope builds for nations to save bird that flies 30,000 kilometers. 30,000 kilometers. Okay. So basically we are talking about a species, especially a migratory species. Understand this, whenever we are talking about biodiversity, it is not just in situ conservation. Okay, we are also, when we talk about conservation, we're talking about two types of conservation is there. One is in situ conservation, the other is ex situ conservation. What is the difference between the two? In situ means that you are conserving the species within their habitats. Now the next question is, if their habitats are changing. That means if the animals prove to be migratory in nature, that means you not only have to conserve their habitat, you also have to ensure that their ecological niche, that is where do they perform their certain activities, for example food niche, reproductive niche, right? All of this needs to be protected, right? So migratory species implies your ecological niche must be also protected, right? Now this has been seen in respect to Hudson Godwit. Okay, Hudson Godwit. Why do we say hope builds? The reason is that this population of Hudson Godwit, this was declining at a very, very rapid pace. Okay, and there is one convention that deals with the migratory species, and that is the Bonn Convention or the Convention on Migratory Species, right? So you have Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species. This is CMS, and this meeting was held. This meeting was held especially for conserving these species, right? Species of Hudson Godwit. So now Hudsonian Godwit plus 42 migratory species proposed for international protection, and the reason was rapid population decline. Okay, so that is the reason that the news says that hope has built up, because now they are also enlisted under the CMS. Okay. So the key trigger fact is that 40 years, in the last 40 years, 95% of the population has actually declined. This means very few individuals of these species remain in the environment. Okay, 95% in last 40 years. Now what does this indicate? It does not only indicate that species are lost. Understand this, whenever we talk about biodiversity, every species is also linked to the other. Okay, or the species is also linked to its habitat. Okay, not just the individuals of other species, but also to the habitat. Okay, these are a kind of self-sustaining mechanism that can also empower the other components of the ecosystem, and if they are removed, they might prove to be harmful for the ecosystem as a whole. Okay, so when we talk about not just species loss, it is a global biodiversity crisis. We are also talking about the targets that we set in the biodiversity targets. We have Kunming, Montreal biodiversity targets. Okay, so these targets will say that we will try to conserve species, conserve biodiversity, 30% in land and 30% in oceans by 2030. Right, so it is marking a global biodiversity loss, and CMS has done right. This convention on conservation of migratory species has done right in notifying that these must be internationally protected. Now, what is the reason behind this decline? The decline is driven by climate change and habitat disruption across borders. Now, you understand that these are migratory species. We will also see the map. Okay, migratory species. Because of that, you will also find that climate change is leading to their habitat degradation. Okay, and secondly, habitat disruption across borders. Disruption across borders, because of this migration, you will also find that the multiple habitats from where this Hudson Godwit migrates to also is getting degraded. Okay, habitat disruption. Both of these are the causes. Okay. Now moving on to the extreme migratory specialist. Okay, why do we call it the extreme migratory specialist? You will find that in the first slide itself we said that it can fly. It flies annually 30,000 kilometers. So it is one of the extreme migratory specialist. Okay, migration pattern. It breeds in the Arctic. Okay, you have to see that it breeds in the Arctic, and in winters it is found to be in Patagonia. Okay, that is in your South America. Okay, so you can see that this is the kind of migratory pattern. This is the kind of migratory pattern that you have. So Alaska, this is the part. This is the breeding ground. This is the breeding ground for Hudson godwit. Okay. In this New Zealand, this is the feeding ground. These are the staging sites. These three are the staging sites. Okay, so we are seeing that there are certain different locations, that is for their breeding, that is your reproductive niche is in Alaska, nearby areas, right? Then it has to migrate for its feeding grounds, and that is in New Zealand, right? And then the staging sites, that means the intervening sites between these two seasons, you will find that it is in these areas, right? So round the clock they are going on migration. The migration has been being performed by this Hudson godwit. So this has extreme capabilities. 30,000 kilometers annual migration. So we have seen in the first slide, annual migration is 30,000 kilometers every year. And they also can perform non-stop flights up to 11,000 kilometers. 11,000 kilometers non-stop, without stopping for anything, they can fly. Okay. So they are among the longest in animal kingdom. Okay. So this is something that has not been performed by other types of migratory species, and therefore they need to be conserved also. Okay. You have to notice that longer the migration process, longer the distances that they have to cover, the more protection and conservation they need. Okay. Now, ecological dependence first relies on precise ecological timing. There is a biological clock. Okay, that is, when we talk about animal species, we have a biological clock to understand. That means there is a time and also place for this kind of a niche that is fed in the animal. Okay, that means the animal knows when to move and for what to move. Okay, this is the biological clock that tells the animal to do so. And this is something that is a part of your behavioral adaptation. Behavioral adaptation that has been passed generation by generation. This means it has been there in their own, coded in their own DNA. It is something that has been inherited by the further generations. Then you have predictable food availability across ecosystems. That means if they are moving, then they also need the food to be present for the sustenance, for their own survival, right? This is something that is needed. Okay. Now coming to some static portion. This is your static part. That is, we are trying to understand what is CMS, right? So CMS is Convention on Migratory Species. This is CMS. This is also called Bonn Convention. This was in 1979 and under UNEP. UNEP is United Nations Environment Program, right? It came up with Bonn Convention and talked about the migratory species itself, right? What is the objective? The objective is conserve migratory species across international borders. Across international borders. Okay. What are the key provisions? Key provisions under this, it basically, just like you have in Wildlife Protection Act, you have Schedule 1, Schedule 2, right? Just like that in CMS also, you will have Appendix 1, Appendix 2. It depends upon what is the threat to the animal. Okay, so Appendix 1, protect endangered migratory species. Appendix 2, promote international cooperation. Okay, that means international cooperation, as in, because we understand that the species will migrate and therefore various nations need to put their heads together and understand that only international cooperation can contribute to conservation of these species. Therefore, Appendix 1 will talk about the endangered migratory species. Appendix 2 will talk about the collaboration between the nations. Okay, the focus is habitat conservation and removal of migration barriers. That means any kind of habitat degradation or the migratory routes that are not amenable to the migration of these species has to be stopped. Okay. Now, key data in 2024, the report, what does it say? It says that 49% of CMS listed species have declined. 49% of CMS listed species are declining. That means we are not successful in conserving these migratory species as was the objective of this convention. Second, we are seeing migratory birds have seen steepest decline among taxa. Okay, amongst all the vertebrates that we have seen, amongst all the migratory species that we have seen, it is the migratory birds that have seen the most amount of decline. Okay, remember this statistic, 49%. This is going to be important to quote in your mains exam. Okay, in Hudsonian godwit, when we talk about this particular species, there has been 95% decline, and it is a flagship indicator species. When we talk about flagship species and indicator species means that the decline in environmental conditions of the habitat, this, if it happens, then this species would be the first one to decline. That means degradation of environment is represented by the decline in population of these species, right? So this signals both climate as well as habitat disruption globally, right? Globally, why? Because this is migratory in nature, and across all the niche, it is facing such kind of decline in its habitat conditions. Ecological role and threats along flyways. Okay, so this is ecological role and threats. So this is your ecological significance, and second, these are the threats. Okay. So ecological significance, what do we understand? First, it maintains ecosystem connectivity across continents. That means Arctic, temperate and tropical. Okay, we have seen how it moves from Alaska, then to Japan. It can also move to New Zealand. How it moves from Arctics, okay, Arctics to temperate to tropical. So it maintains this type of ecosystem connectivity. Also because it can travel up to 30,000 kilometers annually. Okay. Ecosystem services. What are the services that are performed by Hudson godwit? And then also understanding if these are removed, that means there are no individuals of Hudson godwit remaining, then what is said to be missed? So one is pollination, then pest control, nutrient transport, that is from marine to terrestrial grounds, and bioindicators of climate change. Bioindicators of climate change, right? So you can see in the threats itself, the first point is climate change. That means the phenological mismatch. Phenological mismatch. That means, what does this mean? Phenology basically means, we have to understand that it says that there are certain times, that is, we were talking, remember we were talking about the biological clock. There is a certain time when the birds will be on the move, okay? And if they are expecting a certain type of climate, but it is not present there due to the climate change, then it is going to be a phenological mismatch. That means it does not have the viable conditions for the birds to breed, right? So climate change is actually causing this kind of a phenological mismatch. So Arctic warming is leading to earlier insect emergence, something that is also determining the food niche. Birds migration timing is fixed. It's food shortage for the chicks. Okay, this is also contributing to their deterioration of the food niche. The evidence is there that migration is delayed by 6 days versus a decade ago. Okay, so this means that they are also trying to adapt to this changing or mismatch of phenology, right? Second, habitat loss across flyways, especially in Chile, Patagonia. Okay, salmon and oyster farming. This means that people here, they practice excessive amount of aquaculture. Most of their livelihood will depend upon the fisheries. Okay, and because of this, they also create certain barriers for these migratory species, Hudson godwit, right? So they disrupt intertidal feeding grounds. USA agricultural expansion, it also creates loss of wetlands. We know wetlands are a huge reservoir of nutrients and also host a number of migratory species in certain seasons. Okay, but due to agricultural expansion, you will find that there is a considerable loss of wetlands in the United States of America. Core insights that we can then finally write is the multiple stressors across migration routes. That means whatever the nodal points of the routes are, you will find that there are some or the other stressor that are present. That means that is contributing to the decline of this population. It leads to cumulative ecological collapse. Okay, that means because of the ecosystem services that they provide, this range of services, it will also, because of the absence of this species, you will see a range of ecosystem collapse that is waiting to happen, right? Now next topic, India aiming for 60% non-fossil fuel power sources by 2035. Now this is a topic that is important from the point of view of climate change. Climate change. Okay. So this is very important news, and this is something that can come up in your prelims exam also. It can also make an appearance in your mains exam. So please pay full attention to this topic. It says India is aiming for 60% non-fossil fuel power sources by which year? By 2035. Okay. Now let us try to understand everything. Firstly, Union Cabinet has approved India's updated NDC on 25th of March 2026. What is NDC? NDC is nationally determined contributions. Okay, this is an important figure. This is an important figure or feature of the Paris Agreement that happened in COP21, that is Conference of Party to UNFCCC. UNFCCC is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, right? So according to that, each and every country that are party to this convention, they have to say that this is the amount of carbon emissions that we are going to reduce and how much amount of carbon sink are we going to create, right? So this has to be submitted under UNFCCC, okay, and it is part of Paris Agreement post 2030 cycle, right? Strategic significance. The significance is that this is the third NDC submission. We have already submitted first and the second one. First was just before the Paris Agreement, where we had intentional nationally determined contributions. Post Paris Agreement, we had one more NDC, and this is now the third NDC submission. It comes after COP 29-30. You remember COP 30 happened in Brazil in last November-December, right? So signals enhanced ambition and global South leadership. What does this mean? First thing is we have raised our bar. Okay, we have said that we are going to update our NDC. That means we have already achieved what we were committing to in the NDC 2.0. Now we are moving towards NDC 3.0, and also we are a representative. We are also leading in the global South countries, right? It shows that despite being a developing country, despite having development needs, we are still able to attain our climate commitments. Okay, this builds up our reputation at the international stage. Okay. Now, core targets under this India's 2035 commitments. We have said that this NDC is going to have a target up until 2035. So, what are these targets? First is 47% reduction. 47% reduction in emissions intensity of GDP from 2005 levels by 2035. Now understand this. What is emissions intensity? Emissions intensity simply means first of all, it does not mean emissions. That means we are not going for absolute reduction of emissions. Emissions intensity of GDP. Basically, it means that how much amount of emissions are you going for divided by total GDP of the country. Okay, so this means if you have greater GDP, If there is more growth in GDP, then you can go for more amount of emissions. So it is just saying the emissions intensity will reduce. Okay, because we are certain that GDP growth will also take place and emissions may also rise. Okay, but still we are saying that emissions intensity, we are going to reduce it by 47%. Remember this figure. This is going to be very, very important, not only in this exam, for other prelims also, or quoting in your mains answers also, right? Second is 60% installed power capacity from non-fossil sources. Remember this figure also, 60%. Okay. The next thing, only we talk about whenever we are talking about NDCs, it is upon three pillars. One is emissions intensity. Next, we talk about how much amount of our energy source, that means electricity generation, okay, how much amount of it is going to be derived from the non-fossil fuel. Okay, this is for the installed power capacity. Installed power capacity, not about the generation process. We will see it in the challenges. And lastly, 3.5 to 4 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent carbon sink. 3.5 to 4 billion tons. Okay. So these three figures, you have to embed them in your mind. Okay, 47, 60 and 3.5 to 4 billion tons. Okay, when we try to commit to NDCs, we are saying on three things. We are saying emissions intensity. We are saying that how much amount of tree cover or carbon dioxide equivalent, 3.5 to 4 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent has to be absorbed in the biomass, in the carbon sink. And thirdly, we are saying how much of our installed capacity power should be derived from non-fossil fuel. Okay, so this is an alignment with the long-term vision. What is the long-term vision? Remember, in Panchamrita goals, India had committed to Panchamrita goals also, and we had said that there has to be net zero by 2070. What is the net zero target? 2070. It does not mean at 2070 India will stop emitting. There will be no carbon dioxide emissions or there will be no greenhouse gas emissions from India by 2070. It just means that whatever emissions we are going for, we will also try to absorb that much amount of, that is, we are going to have that much equivalent carbon sink by that time, right? So that is your net zero, and it is also linked to Viksit Bharat 2047 vision. Okay, something, these are important keywords that can be written in your answers. Okay. Now static, okay, just so that we are in line with how it relates to the static part of the subject. This is again climate change we are talking about. Okay, what is NDC? We have seen nationally determined contributions, and this was under Paris Agreement. When did it happen? In COP 21, and this is in the year 2050. Paris Agreement, this is. Paris Agreement basically is the rule book, or you could say the constitution of the debates that have happened between the developed and the developing nations. So it is voluntary national targets. Notice this word voluntary, it is not something that is fixed. Kyoto Protocol, the one preceding this kind of Paris Agreement, was something that was having fixed targets and also fixed timelines. So it targets emission reduction and also climate adaptation. Okay. What is the guiding principle? The guiding principle is CBDR-RC. What do you mean by CBDR-RC? It means that common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. When we are talking about common is the problem of climate change. That means it is not only local, it is global in nature, right? This common problem has to be dealt by countries. They have differentiated responsibilities because we have developed nations who have developed first and led to huge amount of historical emissions. Okay. While on the other hand, you have developing countries who are still in the stages of initial development, and therefore they need more amount of support, right? So they have differentiated responsibilities, and ones who should be allowed to emit in larger quantities should actually be the developing countries, right? And also respective capabilities. This means that this nation, okay, all the nations are not equal in their development phase, and therefore they are also not able to have equal amount of capabilities to portray a solution for the climate change, right? So respective capabilities, as per your own capabilities, what can you contribute? That is what NDC says. That is nationally determined contribution. Whatever you can contribute as a solution to the climate change as per your respective capabilities, please do so. Okay. So this balances development and climate responsibility. So review mechanism under this Paris Agreement. It is updated every 5 years. Every 5 years you will have a updation, and it is also based upon the global stocktake, that is called GST, global stocktake. Okay, that means it was first completed in 2023 and tracks the progress towards the 1.5 degree Celsius goal. Paris Agreement, it said that we have to limit the climate change, we have to limit the temperature to less than 2 degrees Celsius, and if we can be ambitious and pursue 1.5 degrees Celsius, less than 1.5 degrees Celsius also, right? Okay, now evolution of India's target, just for a comparative understanding. First NDC was in 2015. This is your first NDC. Okay, here we had 33 to 35% emissions intensity reduction by 2030, right? In 2022, this came as an updated NDC. This was our second one. Okay, so 45% emissions intensity. That means we moved from how much? 33 to 35%. Then we said we will reduce the emission intensity by 45%. Okay, in 2026, that is today, in this week, we have seen that there is third NDC and it says 47% emissions intensity reduction by 2035. This is also by 2030. And now we are saying 47%. This means we are stepping up our game. We are saying that we are capable of even more, right? Under our voluntary NDC. The second thing is 40%. When we talk, this is about emissions intensity. Then we talk about fossil fuels, that is non-fossil fuels, non-fossil sources. In this first NDC, we talked about 40% contribution. Then in the second one, we talked about 50%. And now in the third one, we are talking about 60%. Okay, notice this kind of a jump, right? So it instills confidence in us that climate commitments are something that we are actually going on road and meeting. Then with respect to carbon sink creation, okay, 2.5 to 3 billion tons. Okay. Then in 2026, you will have 3.5 to 4 billion tons. Okay, so this is a comparative analysis that we have done in understanding what our updated NDCs look like. Okay, this means that we are on an ambitious time scale. Now, India's current progress, it also is important for us to know at what point India's current progress lies. So, emissions intensity, how much we have reduced? 36% reduction has actually been achieved between 2005 to 20. This is close to 2030 target already, right? We were talking about reduction from 33 to 35% in the first NDCs, right, till 2030. Now, we have said that 45%. And then we have upped it to 47% by 2035. Energy transition, we have already seen 52% installed capacity from non-fossil fuels as per 25 to 26. 52% is being installed capacity, we are saying. It already exceeds the earlier 50% target. Now we are moving towards 60% target. Carbon sink, 2.3 billion tons carbon dioxide, 2005 to 2019, near lower bound of earlier target. Okay. How much has the forest covered? Because we talk about carbon sink, we talk about afforestation also. That means carbon stored in the biomass. So increased from 21% in 2005 to 24.6% 2021. And this is from your State of Forest Report, Indian State of फॉरेस्ट रिपोर्ट, ठीक है। Now coming to the next news that is similar to this, okay, that is we are talking about again, because the earlier news we talked about the fossil fuel, non-fossil sources earlier, okay. Now we are just talking about what is India's nationally determined contribution and this is for the year between 2031 to 2035, okay. That means Paris Agreement, whatever NDCs you had up until 2030, and now we are saying that we are moving ahead in our ambitions and we also have huge amount of climate commitments and that we are already achieving easily. So let us also draft the next 5-year plan for our NDC, okay. So first, this we have already seen, to be submitted under UNFCCC. It is part of Paris Agreement obligations. It is a mandatory, first understand the global context, it is a mandatory update required by 2025. It is not that India is updating on its own. It is something that is required by the UNFCCC commitments under the Paris Agreement. So by December 2025, 128 parties had already submitted. We were amongst the last G20 countries, India and Argentina. Trigger insight, the global stocktake 2023 is that world is actually not on track for 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is, we are going to exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius and that is for sure. Guiding principles, we have already seen CBDR, RC. Moving forward, key targets under this NDC 3.0. We have seen 60% installed electricity capacity by 2035. Currently, it is 52.57%. This is in your February 2026. It includes, what does renewable energy sources include or non-fossil sources include? It includes solar, wind, hydro, biomass and nuclear sources. Okay. Now apart from that, emissions intensity reduction, the target is 47% from the levels of 2005 by 2035. Okay. Achieved, 36% have been achieved by 2020. Okay. Carbon sink creation, again, we are seeing exactly 2.29 billion tons by 2025. This is something that we have seen before also, just for the holistic nature. Now, significance, why this matters? Okay, why this matters when we talk about the global stage. So, global climate leadership at a time of rollback in the developed countries. Remember, United States, okay, some types of developed countries which actually have historically emitted, they are rolling back. They are not actually committing hugely, or they are not increasing their ambitions. They are not increasing their targets by a huge amount. Leave aside increasing their ambitions or increasing their commitments, they are not even able to achieve their current targets, right? So India signals at this point, India signals commitment to climate multilateralism, that is finding a solution. India as a country is finding a solution to this common climate problem. Then global south leadership, it also is strategic alignment between the net zero by 2070 and is linked to Viksit Bharat by 2047. Now key challenges, this one is actually important for you. The first is capacity versus generation gap. Okay, capacity versus generation gap. Okay, remember we were saying that 52.57% of installed capacity is from non-fossil sources, right? But that is your installed capacity. This is your installed capacity. The challenge here lies in that this 52% capacity leads to only 25% of actual generation, right? That means what actually flows into the electricity or power grids. Okay, it is saying that whether it is the electricity that is generated by the renewable energy sources or whether it is the electricity that is being generated by the conventional fuel like coal thermal power plants, right? So the answer is it is actually 25%. That means we have not been able to generate electricity and feed it into the power grid, though we have installed capacity as such. The reason is that there is intermittent renewables. This is the nature of solar and wind. That means sun will not be shining at all times. Secondly, it is not possible to store. It has been lack of storage. That means battery technology has not evolved to such an extent that we can go for mass storage of this type of energy that is harnessed. Second, storage and grid bottlenecks. Okay, as we have discussed, limited battery storage and dependence on imported lithium. Lithium is important component when we talk about the battery storage for renewables. Okay, lithium ion batteries are there. So lithium is something that is not present widely as deposits in our country. So we have to depend upon importing this type of mineral. Third, weak transmission infrastructure. That means our power grids are also not as stable to handle this intermittent nature. That means sometimes it will come, sometimes it will not be there. So this intermittent nature may not be something that can be supported by the present power infrastructure. Third, coal dependence. This is huge. 75% electricity from coal itself. We are talking about coal thermal power plants. Okay. Rapid transition. Okay, remember we talk about transition, we say that it has to be just transition. That means it has to be fair and equitable, because rapid transition will risk what? Energy security, okay, job losses, and there will also be impact on steel and cement. These are your core sectors of economy. Okay, that means you are saying that if we move from coal towards renewable energy sources, and this jerky movement, this jerky transition will actually perform very bad on your economic growth. It can actually destabilize and put people out of jobs. Financial constraints. Financial constraints. We need $40 to $50 billion annually to just support this kind of a transition. Okay. The issues, there is limited climate finance. That means the money is not flowing from the developed countries to the developing countries. Okay. Then you have carbon border taxes. This is also against the principle of CBDR-RC. Carbon border taxes basically means that whenever you are producing a particular good and this good has considerable amount of carbon dioxide emissions or any kind of greenhouse gas emissions, then this would be greater taxed in the developed countries. That means there is a discrimination of earning of revenue based on how much amount of carbon emissions have gone into producing that good. Okay. So this also creates a financial constraint. What is the way forward? What is the way forward? Round the clock renewables. Okay, that means we are trying to say that do we have a solution for the intermittent nature of the renewables? Okay, that means you combine solar, wind and storage. These types of problems must be combined so that there is continuous supply. That means round the clock supply of these must be there. Ensure reliable supply. Repurposing coal infrastructure. That means whatever coal thermal power plants or coal based mines you have, you try to convert it. Convert it into what? Convert these old mines into pumped hydro storage and solar parks. That means when we are talking about solar panels, where will you install them? Where will you find the land to install them? Okay, so it is saying basically that this coal infrastructure then can be repurposed and can be utilized as a solar park. Okay. Carbon market and CCUS. CCUS is carbon capture, utilization and storage. Operationalize carbon credit trading scheme. Incentivize industries, steel, cement and fertilizers. Right. Then fourth, just transition for coal regions. Okay, understand this. For example, states like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, these are the ones that are heavily dependent upon coal as their revenue generation model. Okay. If we completely phase out coal, then what it will result into? It will result into these states losing out on revenue. So this kind of a transition must be just in nature, that is, it must be fair and equitable. So need statutory, not a statutory, just transition fund. That means if we are going towards this transition, let us also create a fund so that it will help these states' revenue. Blended finance, use concessional capital, multilateral banks, de-risk projects and attract private investments. Okay, you have to understand that private investments, the role has been minimal. Okay, we are always focusing on the governments to find the solution. It has also been stated in the economic survey that you should have private investments also to support the climate commitments. All right, so this is about the climate change and all the topics that were important in this week. Thank you so much.